My name is Jerry. My office was on the 82nd floor of the North Tower, and that's where I was on September 11th, 2001.
My name's Gail. My sweetheart Nat and I live across the street from where the South Tower stood. On rainy days, I'd go into that complex and come out on the other side 5 blocks away from where I started. My neighborhood was down in that mall. I could get anything, from books to bread to Broadway show tickets.
I'm Ann. My husband Bruce was a New York City firefighter. He was with Squad 41, which is part of Special Operations. Squad 41 is located in the Bronx.
My name is Anthony, and I worked for the New York City Department of Sanitation for 23 years. I was also a volunteer firefighter where I live in New Jersey. After the attacks of 9/11, I volunteered to work down at the site.
My name is Desiree, and I worked on the 101st floor of the South Tower. Most companies here in New York begin work at 9 a.m. My company begins at 8:30, and being the good employee I am, I was at my desk at 8 a.m. on September 11th.
We all tell our stories to pay tribute to those who died on September 11th and those whose lives were impacted so deeply by the events. On September 11, 2001, 2,753 people were murdered at the World Trade Center.
My polling place is a high school south of Liberty Street, and I was voting when the first plane hit. In the lobby of the high school, we felt the concussion, the lights flickered and went out, but then they came back on again. So the kids in the lobby started to cheer, thinking some Con Ed transformer blew up, they'd get a day off school. We went outside and there were papers flying hundreds of feet up, but there was no wind. People were starting to stream away saying something blew up in the Trade Center. Part of the confusion for me is because I lived so close to the South Tower, I couldn't see around it. So it was my aunt in California who called and said, they're saying a plane hit the North Tower, but that's the one away from you guys, right? So you're okay, right? And for 17 minutes, we were okay.
An express elevator door opened, and I went down with 4 of my coworkers and 51 strangers. When we reached the lobby level, the police and fire department were already there, and they were instructing us to leave via the mall level. They didn't want us to go out onto Liberty Street. I could see broken glass and fires on Liberty Street, and a lot of mail, a lot of paper, FedEx envelopes, UPS envelopes, and they were strewn everywhere. We walked through the mall, made it up to the street level. I took about 10 steps out the door when one of my coworkers yelled, "Run."
I stopped by my dancing school to check messages, and I got back in the car and turned the radio on, and now I know it was about 5 after 9. And when I turned the radio on, I heard that a plane had hit the Trade Center. And I personally thought, like, what kind of dingling would do that? Because it was a beautiful day, and they were saying that it was a small plane. And then as I put the car into reverse, they announced that another plane hit. And as I got on the highway to head home, there was an announcement over the radio for all New York City firefighters to report for duty. My husband Bruce was already on duty, but I knew that the fire department does not issue total recalls. They'd never issued a total recall. So to me, I just thought, okay, we're at war.
People were yelling, "Don't look back, keep moving," and then that made a lot of sense because we knew there were so many people behind us that needed to get out. So I walked about a half a block north, and then I did look back, and I was totally astounded to see that both towers were on fire. Although strangely, I remembered the flames, but not the smoke. And I was thinking that part of the plane might have bounced off of Tower 1 and into Tower 2, because at that point I didn't yet know that there had been a second plane crash. And then I just needed to get to a phone to let my family know that I wasn't dead. I was really scared that my daughter, who was 9 years old at the time, was seeing the same image on television and didn't know how I was.
There was a roar of noise. You could not make out individual sounds like glass breaking or metal tearing, just a roar. The building shook from things hitting it. The ground shook from the force of the collapse. The weirdest thing was it felt like my head was being squeezed in and out. Later, they explained to me that as the building pancaked down, it was generating pressure waves in the air, and that's what I was feeling. Thank goodness Nat was there, because that whole day, I would start to accept people are flying planes into office buildings. But then I would just step back like, wait, what? I couldn't process it.
But it was really hard getting out of the city that day. The police weren't letting anyone across. I sat in traffic for a very, very long time. And one of the amazing things was all the people that were around my car, just walking in the street because it was total chaos, they actually would come up to my car, bang on the window, begging me, please, please, give me a ride into New Jersey. I don't mind telling you, I was very, very scared. But I let 4 strangers sit in my car, and when the police finally let us through, I took them into New Jersey. And when I got there, somehow I felt a lot safer.
We ended up with friends on Canal Street, and after 2 weeks, we were contacted and told that we would be allowed a 15-minute police-escorted visit back into our building. By that time, there was a perimeter fence up around the area, so we had to meet at a checkpoint. And when they swung that gate open, I walked down my street and just wept. It looked bombed and burned and blasted. The high school where I had been voting had morgue spray painted on the side. They had to use the cafeteria freezers and refrigerators as temporary morgue space.
In addition to all of that, 500,000 volunteers came down there to help. And many of them that I know, many of them paid their own way to get there. And they asked for nothing in return except to help. But all of those people had to be fed. All the workers had to be fed. All that garbage had to be thrown out. Those are some of the small things I did. But I can tell you with a very humble heart, as I sit here, what I did is very small. Excuse me. What I did is very small compared to the other things that people on this stage had to go through. I'm sorry.
The death certificate was mailed to me about a month later, and it was dated October 29th. What's interesting is I got 10 copies of the death certificate because they realized you were going to need every one of those copies for all the paperwork you were going to have to fill out. But the thing I remember most about the death certificate was under the cause of death, it said homicide.
I thought I was going to learn how to get over it. Instead, I learned that this is always going to be part of who I am. Volunteering for things like this helps me accept that. Remembering that day, those people, it can be a tough thing to do, and I thank all of you for doing it.
I got out of the World Trade Center on September 11th, and I'm really sorry for those who didn't. And that really sums up why I tell my story, to provide a small window in on what happens to people that day, people who died and the people who lived. And I thank you for allowing me to do that for you.
My company, Aon, lost 176 people on September 11th. 19 of them were on my floor. They were not only co-workers, but some were friends. I do this to remember them. We can never forget all we lost.
You don't know this, but today, you also did more for us than we could possibly do for you. Because people like us need to tell our story. We need to heal inside, and this is how we heal, and you allowed us to heal today. So I thank you very, very much for that. But we have to remember not only the nearly 3,000 people that were killed on 9/11, but we also have to remember the families and the people left behind, and all the good that came out of 9/11 10 years later. And we have to continue it.
I believe that we each have a story, and for September 11th to be more than just facts on a timeline and statistics, we have to tell those stories. We have to know those stories. It makes those people real, and it has to be real for it to matter. So that's why I do this.